Welcome back to Across the Opti-Verse, everyone. We've got a great episode today. We're going to be talking about the real risks of AI. As we know, it's a popular topic. It's dominating every industry. I'm in conversations about AI really often, but it comes with kind of a fear to it. We know AI can be quite scary, the power it holds in the modern industry. And so as the title of today's episode really says it all, we're going to talk about these real risks. What are we actually putting at risk when we use AI, when we adopt AI, and what does it mean? Our guest today is Jeremy Breitenbach. He's a mechanical engineer from Tux. He has a master's from UCT in evolutionary AI. He actually was the person that interviewed me almost 7 years ago to the day when I started at Optinum, and he's watched me grow, but I've actually been able to see his passions, his field of study, and everything kind of grow into what he's been doing here at Optinum. He has spent a lot of time understanding data, extracting insights, and really seeing how AI can be adopted. The reason we have him here today, his position, his background, really puts him in a unique position to talk to us about where AI has gone wrong and how do we use AI properly to really ensure that we get success from it and that it's used ethically. So we really hope you enjoy this episode. As you know, you can catch us wherever you get your podcast from, Spotify, YouTube, anything like that. And we are looking forward to see what Jeremy has to tell us. Jeremy, thanks so much for being here. I mean, you have a really impressive background in AI, from where you started at Optinum in the more consulting side of our business to where you are now as the head of new business at Optinum. Let's talk about it. Tell us about your journey from where you started to how you've been so involved in AI here.
Yeah, so as you said, I studied mechanical engineering, but really actually my love of sort of technology and all that actually started in school with coding. I found myself in a computer science class learning about Delphi in those days, and I realized and learned how you could use code to make things happen on a computer, and I really loved it. There was a period of time where we actually didn't have a high school teacher for that class, and I loved it so much that I ended up sort of coaching my classmates around coding.
Oh, awesome.
Because I was obsessed. I just used to spend every afternoon and evening trying to code up games and processes and things like that.
Brilliant.
So that's where I started. I really enjoyed coding. Years later, I did mechanical engineering, and I sort of focused on trying to figure out how do I use coding and software development to apply mechanical engineering theory. But then it took a bit of a turn when I ended up at Optinum as a consultant, where I was placed on a project with a telco. So at the beginning, it was about creating systems that could basically apply the rules and the logic and the systems that the telco needed from us. But I suddenly found myself in an environment with just abundance of data, just huge amounts of data on people, on spending, on pricing, on movement, on all sorts of patterns.
Yeah.
And around about that same time, there was a lot of interest spinning up around data science. It was sort of a new field then. And I suddenly realized here's something that I actually enjoy even more than software development.
Yeah.
Was digging into data and understanding what it can tell us. So years later, AI started to become more known in the public, and I became aware of it and started to dig into AI.
Yeah. That's really impressive. How long have you been at Optinum?
Oh, geez, so 2014 I started.
Okay, so 10 years. A long journey. And as you say, that data, I also, in my time, have worked on this telco project, and I agree that the abundance of data that we have available to us as businesses, as people, we've got to use it for something. And it's to benefit society, to benefit businesses, to benefit products, to benefit the people that make use of it. So, it seems like a bit of a natural journey from software to data and data science into AI. But there's an important part of it, as the title says, there's risk to adopting AI. How did you become so well versed in the risk, let's say? How did you identify and see the risk? What kind of was the journey to that?
Well, actually, my first interest in sort of the risk of AI started uh, in science fiction because I've always loved reading, and one of the series or authors that I got into at some stage was Isaac Asimov.
Yeah.
He's got the famous, or probably is most well known for the movie iRobot, which was Will
Yeah,
Smith,
with
and
Will Smith.
it
Yeah.
was all based on actually an Asimov series of books.
Okay.
So in these books, Asimov writes about this world in which AI has been developed and robots are commonplace. He calls it the positronic brain. It's basically substitute ChatGPT or Llama or OpenAI, one of those things for positronic, and you'd actually find that Asimov was telling the future in many ways. But in any case, he loved to explore in his books the limits of controlling, of being able to actually control AI and these positronic brains. He's famous for his 3 laws of robotics. The first one, if I remember them right, a robot must do no harm to a person.
Yes.
Second, a robot must obey a human as long as it doesn't contravene law 1. And law 3, a robot must preserve itself as long as it doesn't contravene law 2, something along those lines. But I started to realize in those days, reading about that AI will change the world in all sorts of amazing ways, but inherently, it's inherently a black box system. You don't know what's coming out.
Yeah.
And because of that, there's risk. And so I started to get interested in how do you actually allow AI to take you to all these amazing places, but also put the right guardrails in place or have the right approaches that will allow you to prevent catastrophe if it goes the wrong way.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of something my math teacher used to say in school. Given we design AI, we're going to be the people, the society, the generation, to say that creates all these fantastic AI models and AI capabilities. What you put in is what you're going to get out. So if you give bad information, you give bad decision-making metrics, and you give bad data, you're going to get bad results. And that comes with a whole lot of negatives to it. Maybe I should preface it here for the people like listening and watching, is that we're not saying don't adopt AI. That's a pointless argument. It's part of kind of society now. We have to adopt it. We're saying be aware of the risk. Make sure you're giving it good information. Make sure you have rich data that will help. Not that's going to create a scenario where you are running around kind of like a headless chicken trying to solve a problem that you don't know how it was created. And I think that kind of goes into what we want to talk about next, is that you, in your kind of working and professional experience and from schooling and educational kind of point of view, you've had a lot of experience in a lot of industries, banks, telcos that we know about, we've already spoken about, but you've also worked in some of the aerospace and defense field, smart mining and manufacturing, all of these digital engineering, simulation engineering spaces. All of these industries are or have already adopted AI solutions. And they've got positive stories from it. But there's also the bad stories. I want to talk to you more about the bad stories. Maybe you can tell us, what story have you seen, something that you've seen where really AI was adopted with great intentions, but the results proved to create more challenges than solutions?
Yeah, so I mean, there's lots of stories. There's a few in the public domain that I think many of us are aware of. You might know about the Apple Card sort of controversy from around 2019, where they worked together with Goldman Sachs, and allegedly bias was let through in the scoring system, the credit scoring system from Goldman Sachs, such that women were getting lower credit scores, or were getting less credit given to them than men with the same credit scores. And so these biases can sneak through. There's also the example of Tay, the Microsoft chatbot. I think a lot of people are aware of that. Was sort of released to the wild, and pretty soon became abusive on Twitter, and so it had to be decommissioned. So I think these are examples of things where the right intentions were there, but it was unpredictable
Mm.
that the AI or this model would go a different direction.
Mm.
But my favorite story of the risk of AI actually comes from a story I know sort of secondhand from our partners at MathWorks.
Mm.
There was a fairly large international bank that got into a bit of or had a bit of a challenge that ended up costing them a lot of money
Mm.
because of the lack of the right kind of AI governance in place.
Yeah.
What happened is they had a tier one model in the bank that they'd relied on for years for a core part of their business. It turned out that this had been developed primarily by a single person. Um, that person moved on to some other company. A while later, the Prudential Authority came to the bank saying, we need to understand how you come to your results in this tier one model.
Yeah.
And they suddenly realized they had no answer for that because the guy who had developed the model had moved on. And even with the best, some of the best documentation, it's sort of a challenge.
Yeah.
So they had no choice but to spend a lot of money hiring some very smart people to reverse engineer that model so that they could then re-engineer it with the right levels of governance in place, documentation and all the things that are required to make sure that it could be verified by the authority.
Yeah, I mean, it even goes back just so they could answer the question to their own staff, their own employees. It's a really good example with the AI wasn't bad and the results weren't bad. It was just nothing governing it, nothing kind of allowing it to go through the proper process that any project would, any normal kind of application, anything like that. You have to go through creating, reviewing, verifying, and with that governance, you create a chain, a repository, a kind of a trail that allows for everything to be tracked back, traceability of what's going on. That's really where it is. That's a really good point.
There's actually a paper I was reading. We can link it in the notes if that's possible.
Yeah.
But it's quite interesting. It's about the consequences of the potential negative consequences of AI, and I thought they summed it up really, really well in one of their statements, which was, I've got it written here: when dealing with complex systems, the focus needs to be placed on ensuring accidents don't cascade into catastrophes.
Yes.
Because I think the point is that AI is happening. No one's going to stop it.
Yeah.
And most of us don't want to stop it as well because it's of all the positive benefits. It shouldn't be making our lives easier and more exciting. But because it's a black box system, things, unintended consequences will arise.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
So we just need to make sure that the right systems are in place to catch them quickly and stop them before they cascade into catastrophes.
Yeah.
They talk about the lines of defense in governance of AI systems. The first line being an interesting one, which is basically everybody needs to understand the risk of AI in the organization.
Yes.
So they talk about things like everybody developing AI models and working with AI models needs to understand that safety is not a limitation that you're working against, but actually needs to be one of the goals that you're working towards. Build AI models that are safe. That's part of the goal.
That's brilliant.
And then the second line being systems, like our product Modelscape, that puts systems in place where you can track changes to models over time. You can see, make sure that there isn't goal drift, model drift, data drift, making sure there's tools to validate models before they go out into the wild, making sure that the model you actually deploy is the same model, giving the same results as the one that was in the development environment. So those sorts of systems really help. And then thirdly, there needs to be auditing. at the end of the day, humans are probably still the people that care most about humans.
Yes.
We can't trust systems to care about humans, so there has to be a sort of a human in the loop to always be auditing, checking, and applying common sense
Yeah.
to see that these things are taking us in the right direction, not in the wrong direction.
Yeah. No, I like that human in the loop metric of it. It is important. It always goes back to humans are able to make rational decisions based on information presented, where AI has rules and can be unpredictable.
It's interesting. I'm actually currently reading a book, another science fiction book about some in the distant future, humans are trying to travel away from Earth into some other kind of planet to establish a colony. And they've decided that although they have these intelligent robots that are able to compute vast amounts of information and decide whether to continue the journey or sort of abandon the journey, they've made sure that there's actually a single human that's there that's actually they trust to make the final decision.
Yes.
Because humans inevitably are the people that can be trusted for the sake of humans.
Yes, and as it should be. You mentioned modelscape. Sorry, I'm going to take us into this modelscape, this governance structure that you talk about. It's essentially an operational tool that allows for you to easily kind of deploy AI models with governance really well defined, well set up. Kind of goes on the MLOps kind of framework. When we talk about MLOps, what are we talking about? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I mean it's in the name, machine learning, ML, and ops operations. It's really about having it's about those three lines of defense, really, especially the second one. So it's about having a system that guides people and developers in using AI in governable, safe, correct ways. So what Modelscape is a set of tools that allow you to do that. There's a development environment that allows you to develop tools in AI quickly. There's the validation tools that allow you to get somebody else or another team to validate that the results are as expected. And for example, there's no bias in the system, like we're seeing in the Apple Card case. There's deployment tools and testing tools. Very importantly, there's monitoring tools because, as I mentioned, things will go wrong, and so most important is to have a really strong system for monitoring and catching when those things go wrong, so that you can mitigate and launch a new development cycle. And then there's all the governance tools that allow you to actually go back, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, and see exactly what data was used, what code was used, how did you get from an idea all the way through to a deployed model.
Yes, that's and I think when you speak about that monitoring to catch things, it means to catch it early. Might not be able to stop the damage, but you can really, really reduce the damage to the business, to the product, to whatever you're working in. That's really important.
It's interesting. There's for the sort of traditional approach is that you set up monitoring and validation cycles for important models. So you might say, for example, there's a really important model I've got. I want to check it twice a year. So June and December. I want to go through a whole effort to check if it's doing the right things still, the data still makes sense, all the metrics I've used in developing the model are still meeting the criteria we've set. Things are changing in that actually a better strategy is live monitoring or full-time monitoring. So if you can have a system in place that automatically looks at metrics of a model all the time and sets alerts or sends alerts when things are not quite right, then you can pick it up immediately and make a tactical intervention. It reminds me of the whole concept of from another industry in predictive maintenance. For many years, from my mechanical engineering days, for many years, and still in many places, the approach to maintaining equipment has been you shut down the plant and you maintain a piece of equipment twice a year or once a year, whatever the case. Actually, if you're doing something like predictive maintenance, you can keep the machine running, but predict when is the monitoring. By doing monitoring and predictive maintenance, you can predict, okay, I need to make an intervention to fix something now, and rather than at a particular time, and keep it running keep the plant up and operational for longer, essentially.
Yeah.
Similar concepts.
It's actually, it reminds me of the episode Audrey and Jason did a while ago when they were talking about kind of computer vision and the safety things you can apply there. Really, the project, for anyone who hasn't watched the episode, and I urge you to go watch it, used virtual fencing and computer vision models to detect when there was going to be a catastrophic failure to shut down the system. Yes, production then slows down, but if there was a catastrophic failure, the safety of your staff, your resources, your equipment, you could lose a lot more and very quickly. And those are the types of things we want from AI. That's really, I mean, that, and I like that where you talk about that predictive maintenance, but also validating, making sure that what you're doing is safe and good for the business. Could be great, but if it's not safe, not worth it. Yeah. So I think we can kind of start wrapping it up, talking about this. You and I had a conversation just before we recorded this about, what's a good story of AI, where it's worked. A lot of people with their objective analysis could say, oh, well, this is just going to try and make this company more money, or it's just trying to make this cooler or abuse our privacy. But AI does have a lot of benefits. I mean, maybe from a positive lens. Do you have any stories where you can really talk about how AI was adopted and it yielded positive results for the people who adopted it?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's tricky. It's nuanced. I was really giving it some thought and trying to think, where is there a purely positive story? But I think that not being able to find something like that points to the truth of the matter, which is that AI is actually just a tool. It's a tool that can be used for good or for bad. And so it's all about us putting it comes back to the human in the loop. It's about us making sure that we're doing good things with it, and that we're quickly catching the moments when bad things are done with it, and having the right regulations in place and systems in place to minimize the bad and maximize the good. So I think it's actually nuanced.
That's probably the perfect answer to a question like that. It is nuanced. We can't, justify to one person AI helping you to sell a product better. Could be, well, they're breaching my privacy to market to me. It's things that are happening, and it is nuanced, and as you say, as long as it's done with the correct intentions to help improve society, to improve business, and there are regulations in place to catch when the bad happens. I think that is perfect way to go. Now, maybe to wrap it up, so I can leave our listeners in a good space, is that AI is a fantastic tool, provided you use it properly, you govern it properly. We're not saying don't adopt it. You will be left behind if you don't adopt AI. We're seeing it firsthand, and we know these conversations come with a lot of work. Put the right thinking, put the right thought into what you want AI to do, and make sure you adopt it correctly. You adopt the right structure. It's kind of like front load the research to really make sure you've put in the right processes. With a proper governance structure, you are removing a lot of these issues that we didn't really know when AI started would show up. We now know enough. I think the important one to me is something like key man dependency, not knowing what's going on. You can allow your business, your ideas to run well governed, well structured, and you don't have to worry about that person who created that model from 9 years ago. Are they still there? Because if they can't explain it, then we don't know how to explain it. I think it's a perfect way to close it off. We love talking AI. It's actually one of our core capabilities of our business. We've got so much experience in it from telcos, banks, but even just general kind of solution capabilities of things like Monte Carlo modeling, computer vision, and also what we spoke about with Kirsten in the first episode, AI and medical image analysis.
And the generative AI is super interesting at the moment. It's something I'm having a lot of fun at the moment, is finding use cases for generative AI
Yes.
across the industries,
Yeah.
from banking to engineering to telcos. And it's because it's so new, it's about figuring out what are the right governance
Yes.
structures in place that we can go ahead, full steam without worrying about things going wrong,
Yes.
because we've got a net to catch things.
I mean, brilliant. I think that's a perfect way to close it off.
Thanks, Dean. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate the time. As I said, you can catch us wherever you get your podcast from. We really want to talk to you more about AI. We love talking about it, so please do reach out to myself, to Jeremy, to Audrey. I think we could nerd out potentially and just speak about it for hours. We love talking about it, and we hope you guys got a lot from this. And at worst, you guys are thinking about how to properly structure your AI so that you really can get the most benefit for what you want to do. With that, we can close off. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks.